trying to drag you back to the old way. Moses looks up and the sea parts, and you cross it, and now you're on your way back into the desert, heading towards the promised land, and that's where you're at. That's where you're at if you want to be. But you can turn around anytime you want and go right back to the same lunacy, to the same hate, and to the same guilt, and to the same fear. And that's what people are doing today. You know why? You know why the stores are selling out of melatonin all over the country because of the Newsweek article? You know why you can't buy any in the stores? Because people do not know that the very scriptures that they carry under their arms say to you that if you will sit in the darkness of meditation, it will flow. That Jesus Christ said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. They don't know that. So they go to the store to buy it. So we're heading in the right direction. In the wilderness, we're still in the confusion, and you know that even though you've crossed the Red Sea, you know that what happens to you. No matter what you do in your journey, you've meditated Tuesday night, and Wednesday you got ambushed. Boom! Somebody shot at you. Something happened within you Wednesday. Something happened Thursday. Something happened on the job. Something happened in the house. Something happened, and you had a skirmish. You had a fight. You had an attack somewhere within you. But there is something that this scripture says that tells you right away something good's going to happen. There's going to be a change. Exodus 15, right where you are. Moses and they went out from the wilderness of Shur. Do you see that? And they went how many days? 3. The number 3 means new life. The number 3 means that which is old is going to pass away and something new is going to happen. You have to understand metaphysics, you have to understand numerology and understand this, but that's what it means. Why does the number 3 mean that? Is there any basis in science for that? Yes. On December the 21st, the sun goes through the cross. It's crucified. It's the shortest day of the year. On December the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, the sun sits in the tomb of the earth. It's called the winter solstice. The sun sits there the darkest days of the earth. On December the 25th, the sun is reborn, and from that day on, the darkness grows shorter. Every day grows longer. There's more light, there's more light, there's more light, because the sun is born out of the winter solstice. The number 3 signifies the 3 days and 3 nights of the winter solstice, that there is the end of the downward pull, and here is the beginning of the upward pull. Here is the end of the involution. Here is the beginning of the evolution. Here is the end of the winter of your life. Here is the beginning of the spring of your life, because the energy is starting to rise. The fire is starting to come up from the solar plexus to hit the pine cone, explode the pine cone of seeds of new life into your brain, and you start thinking differently. And if you don't believe me, and you can't, how are you going to come down in the basement of some shopping center in Fork and River and believe me? That's ridiculous. I understand that. But certainly Newsweek wouldn't lie. So, there it is. So, right now, in the story, they're in confusion. And why are they in confusion as they're traveling? There's no water. It does not have anything to do with drinking water. Baptism has nothing to do with wet water that you put your head in. You are looking at metaphysics. You are looking at the ancient religions. There are 5 stages of consciousness. The first is earth. The second is water. The third is air. The 4th is fire. The 5th is new life. When you take the earth, which is your head, and lift it through meditation into the second stage of consciousness, you come to water. You begin to understand truth. You then rise out of the second stage of consciousness in your meditation, and you enter the air, which is the third stage where there are no thoughts. You then rise up through the air, and you touch that which is the fire, which is the spirit. That's why in all of your life they would take you when you're a baby or take you when you get involved in a church, and they'd stick your head in water. And when you come out, you might have had the flu or you might have got something, but you got nothing as far as anything to do with God because you missed it. 99% of the people who have been baptized have never been baptized because this is an inner struggle. The earth, the mind, goes to the second stage, water. And what does it say here? They're searching in the wilderness and they could not find water. They could not find the truth. They could not understand this. So the Bible says we will rise to meet Jesus where? In the air. And so the whole idea, the philosophies of the religions is that you're going to actually fly through the sky. No, you're not. You're going to raise yourself to the third stage of consciousness and meet that which is the Christ consciousness within yourself. When there are no thoughts, then you'll meet Christ in the air. So this is what this is all about. So a lack of water is a lack of truth. When you're struggling through the wilderness, even now, even though you've come out of the left side, even though you're heading for the right side, even though you're heading for the promised land of the right hemisphere of the brain, you still get into a point of confusion. You feel it within yourself. There is not one person sitting in this room that should not pick up this Newsweek article instantly and be meditating. There is not one person that you know of that has cancer or that has some kind of serious disease. You should sit with them with that article and say, for God's sakes, look at this. And look, Jesus talked about it. Jacob talked about it. Osiris talked about it. Rene Descartes talked about it. This is a scientific fact. This is what it means. You set aside time inside of yourself. And inside of your children. I don't care if your children understand it. I don't care if you understand it. What do you have to understand about the pineal gland secreting melatonin? You'll never understand it. All you have to do is know that when you sit down in the darkness, it does. Period. I do not have to understand how the television works in order to watch it. All I know is I press the little thing in my hand and pictures come on. How it happens, I haven't any idea. But it happens. And that's what we have to understand. So we seek this truth. Constantly we're looking for this water. Constantly. You're sitting here because you've never heard the truth. You think this is going to be the truth out there? Devils? God's going to blow the world up? God killed his son to forgive you because you ate meat fried. That's the truth. God is on our side because we won the war. We killed how many people we killed. That's the truth. And so it says in Exodus 15, where you're at, verse 23, and when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah. And the reason they couldn't drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. They couldn't drink of the water because it's bitter. You can't take the truth because of the bitterness that's built up in you for years and years and years of this stuff. Loaded with bitterness. This bitterness, this Mara, is depression, it's anger, it's guilt. Much of it comes from religion. Much of it comes from your society. Much of it comes from your schools. Much of it comes from your family. And the bitterness just wells up in you to the point where you can't see, you can't feel, you can't understand. What are you going to do? See, that wakes me up every so often. Let me show you something. Do you see where it says they came, the water was bitter, and they called it Mara? In Hindu, the devil is called Mara. In Hindu, the word for devil is Mara. So what is the devil? Bitterness. You see O.J. Simpson sitting there? Did the devil make him do it? Sure. Bitterness. Or whoever did it. I don't prejudge anything. But there's bitterness. And what can bitterness make you do? Bitterness can make you do anything. And if you're bitter enough, and if you've been assaulted all of your life, then you'll do anything. Maras are the lords of sexual or sensual desires. Mara is the tempter. But in the center of all this bitterness, in the center of all this bitterness, in the center of Mara, a child is born. Mara is Mary. And in the center of all of this bitterness, in the center of Mara, in the center of Mary, in the eye of the storm, there's a quiet place, and there the child is born. In the eye of the storm, the child is born. In the eye of the storm is Mara. In the eye of the storm is Mary. In the center of your head, which is screaming right now with all of the hurt and all of the anger and all of the feelings and all of the bitterness, there's a quiet place, and you can enter into that quiet place, and there it all stops. And there that pineal gland opens, and there the melatonin flows through all parts of your body, and you begin to see things differently, and you begin to feel differently, and you begin to act differently. And that's what it says that Jesus, I am in you. This is the Christ born out of the bitterness. And the source of the bitterness is thought. And the source of the bitterness is thought. You say, well, I don't want to think this way. You don't have any look, here's you. And you're nice. But somebody's dumping in you. Dumping in you, all of your life dumping in you. This is the way it is. Don't think this way. Don't do this. Don't do the other. Do this, do that. And before you know it, bang, bang, bang. And this system's thoughts become your thoughts. The system's thoughts become your thoughts, and it becomes bitterness. And the bitterness flows, and the bitterness flows, and the bitterness flows. And what does Jesus say? Go to page 782. Matthew chapter 6. And in Matthew chapter 6, look at verse 25. Therefore I say unto you, take no thought. And look at verse 27. Why do you take thought? And look at verse 28, and why do you take thought? And look at verse 31, take no thought. And look at verse 34, take no thought. He's saying you've got to separate yourself from these. He doesn't say don't worry. There's no way you cannot worry. But he's saying take no thought. Separate from these thoughts. Separate from these thoughts. There's a plant called Artemisia absinthium or something like that. But it's called hemlock, and it's also called wormwood. It means bitterness. It means bitter. It says in Proverbs 5:4, there's a strange woman, the emotions, her end is bitter as wormwood. But then it says in Revelation, a star fell. A star fell. A light fell. There within you was a star. There within you was a good feeling. There within you was an ideal, a source of love. Something came into your life. Something dumped into you. Something changed you. Something made you feel not the way you used to feel. And the star fell. Go with me for a minute to page 1007, Revelation chapter 8. 1007, Revelation chapter 8, and verse 11. Verse 10, and the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven burning as a lamp, and it fell upon a third part of the rivers and upon the mountains of waters, and the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters be called Wormwood, and many men died because they were made bitter. The third part is your physical, your emotional, your intellectual, and when your spirit is brought down, when that star falls and is brought down by that which is the ideas of your religions and your families and all of this, when that drops, this drops with it. And most people die because of bitterness. And cancer comes from bitterness, and all kinds of things can come from bitterness, and all hope goes, and you know what happens, and what's the rest. They were made bitter. So you see, when you're in the wilderness, which is in confusion, you'll come upon truth. You think it's truth, don't you? You go to church, you never doubted anything. You pick up books, you read it, you never doubt it. Oh, you go around and show somebody, look what it says here. Looks good to me. I believe this. Where did he get the idea? I don't know. Where does the Bible come from? Nobody knows. Who wrote it? Who's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Did anybody ever tell you those people never existed? King Solomon, King David. Did anybody ever tell you there never was a King Solomon, there never was a King David? No. Did anybody ever tell you that the whole New Testament was written in Greek by Greeks in Greece? And it's Greek mythology of Plato and Pythagoras and has nothing to do with Jews and Israel? Did anybody ever tell you it's a myth? No. Well, it's not. Couldn't you ever stop for a second and say, where did all these English people come from? Where did Peter, Paul, and Mary come from winding up in Palestine? Nathaniel, Bartholomew, Philip? Did you ever know there's nobody born named Nathaniel, Bartholomew, Philip, Peter, Paul, and Mary that live in Israel? Never. Nobody ever questions that. Somebody made it up. But it's not made up because of a silly, it's made up because we don't understand. We don't understand allegory. We don't understand metaphysics. We don't understand myth. We don't understand symbolisms. I was telling Josie, Josie's family has a restaurant up here, Tara, and a couple of weeks ago we were in there, one of the young ladies, his sweet girl name was Antonina, is it, or something? Antonella, she's from Italy. I looked up at her and I said, you know what? Let you and me go shoot the bull. What are we going to shoot bull for? Oh. To her, I meant, let's go kill an animal. She didn't know I meant, let's talk. Hey, what did we say? You shut your mouth off. What, are you going to call the first aid squad because you heard somebody shut their mouth off? Spill the beans. It's all like, going to get a broom because somebody spilled the beans? This guy's 3 sheets to the wind. What are you going to do about that? Is it in the backyard hanging up in your clothesline? What is this? And you know what? You laugh because every one of those expressions, you know exactly what they mean. Why? Because you know the symbolic language of your culture. But I can tell you something, folks. You do not know the symbolic language of this culture, and that's why this is taken literally. Even though the Apostle Paul said, be not a minister of the letter. Don't take this stuff literally. It'll kill you. Do you know? Can you tell of anybody that took this stuff literally and killed himself and a lot of people recently? His name was David Koresh. And he didn't know that fire was the 4th stage of consciousness that comes down from the mind to purify away all the guilt, fear, and hurt. He thought of a literal fire because he was taught literally, and so he set the whole place on fire and feel that the will of God was fulfilled because he didn't know. There's nothing more dangerous than a born-again Christian with a gun in his hand. And so here then you realize, it says in Exodus 15:24, the people murmured against Moses because there's this bitterness. We question everything. And then inside of you, the Moses cries out, it says in verse 25, that part of the mind that cries out. And you look what it says, real quick now, because we gotta get out of here. Page 60, Exodus chapter 15. And this is the good part. You come to the water, you come to the lake, and it's bitter. And nobody can drink out of it. In other words, inside of yourself, there's this bitter. And you can't take it anymore. And you can't, it's sucking your, you can't deal with life anymore. And everything is a bunch of hypocrites, a bunch of liars. So what do you do? It says in Exodus chapter 15 and verse 25, and the Lord showed him a tree. Now, the word tree, metaphysically, means you. In the Kabbalah, the Sephirah tree is you. You are the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You are the tree of life. You are the tree. If they were to show you an x-ray of your back, you could see all the nerves, and they spread out in your body like a tree. And what does it say to do? Take the tree and put the tree in the water. Take yourself and put yourself in the 2nd stage of consciousness in the meditation. And you sit there, and as those electrical resistance goes up, the resistors, you chant the international word of electrical resistance, and you chant, Om. See, you thought these people were crazy Buddhists up in Tibet something. You didn't know that they were talking electricity and electrical energy when they were saying, Om. Om! And it would light one chakra, one nerve center, one resistor after the other until it finally hit that pineal gland that sends forth the melatonin. Put yourself in meditation. Put yourself in the water in the 2nd stage of consciousness, and it says here, and the bitter water will turn sweet. The bitterness will go away. The thoughts will go away. Well, I'm not saying you won't come back, and you go back, but the bitterness will go away. Isn't that great? Cast it into the waters were made sweet. And there he made for them an ordinance, and he said, if you'll listen to me, and if you'll do what is right, I will, look at verse 26. Talk about melatonin? We're talking about the pineal gland? We're talking about what it says, going to heal all of these diseases, it says in Newsweek magazine. It says here, look at verse 26. Look, if you'll listen to what I say, you'll do it right, I will put none of these diseases upon you. which I have brought upon you. I won't give you any of that. What does it take? Is it so damn hard to give up the couch for a couple of hours? Is it so hard to turn the lights off? Go and do it in your... Is it so hard to start paying attention to yourself? It doesn't cost you any money. You don't have to join any church. You don't have to become involved in anything. All you have to do is start obeying the wisdom of the ancients, the directions of nature, the directions of God. Look within yourself. Let the darkness close in within you. Let the melatonin begin to flow. And the bitterness will go away. And the bitter waters will become sweet. Now, I got other stuff, but I don't know, I got carried away. It doesn't make any difference. And you know what? Let me just tell you something. So, no, they say, I love the Lord. And Jesus said, look, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. If you stimulate the pineal gland, your body will fill with melatonin. And Jesus said, if you want to catch fish, if you want to have wisdom, fish is brain food. If you want to know, cast your net to the right side. Hey! That means energize the right side. That's what Jesus said. And Jesus said in Luke 11:52, you take away the key of knowledge because you don't enter with it. You know, I don't want to tell you, but I want you to see that, because some of you have never seen it. Tell me what page that's on. Luke 11. What page is that on? I want these people to see that. Luke 11, hurry. What page is that on? What is it? Go to page 846, real quick. Luke chapter 11. Okay? He's talking to the lawyers. Lawyers are people who write the Bible. What does he say? What does it say? You take away the key. Luke 11, chapter 46. Wait a minute, if I got the right... Right, yeah, Luke 11:52, I'm sorry. Luke 11:52. Woe unto you lawyers, and those are the people who give the law of the Bible. You have taken away the key of knowledge. You entered not in yourselves. I didn't say that. Some New Age preacher didn't say that. Jesus said that. There's the key of knowledge. Has nothing to do with going to church, has nothing to do with becoming religious, has nothing to do with reading the Bible. It has to do with entering within yourself. And you hinder those who are entering it. So we meditate, the bitter becomes sweet. And now we'll just go into where we're going to be next week as we continue this. Go to page 60, Exodus chapter 15, and look at the difference. They threw the tree in the water. You place yourself in the second stage of consciousness, which is the truth. And in Exodus chapter 15, okay, where you are, in Exodus chapter 15 and verse 27, it says, and they came to Elim. Elim means trees. And there were 12 wells of water. Perfection! The 12 signs of the zodiac. The encompassing power of nature and the universe. And there were 70 palm trees. 70 is 3 times 20 equals 60, plus 10 equals 70. And the number 7 means divine intervention. The 7 chakras. The 7 nerve centers that ride up your spine. You think what I'm talking about? I promise you this is the last thing I say. Go to Revelation chapter 5. Tell me which page it's on. You can read it with me. I'll give you the Hindu Kundalini. I'll give you what Newsweek magazine is talking about. I'll give you it in the Bible. And that's why people there don't like me, because that's not that I'm using crazy books. I'm not using screwy books and screwy stories. I'm not throwing smoke and stones. I'm giving you it in the Bible. Do you want to see the Hindu Kundalini? Do you want to see the essence that rises up your spine, goes through 7 nerve centers, impacts the pineal gland, and throws open the right hemisphere of the brain in the Bible? Revelation chapter 5, it's on page 1005. 1005. Revelation chapter 5. You there? I want everybody to see it. You there? And I saw, you see, chapter 5, verse 1. And I saw in the right hand, which signifies the right hemisphere of the brain, of him who sat on the throne, which is the highest consciousness, a book. That's the book of life. Remember when you were a kid in your religious school, they said, you got to have your name written in the book of life? This is how it happens. A book written where? Within. And where? And on the backside. And sealed with 7 seals. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. So they come to Elim. That's good. They come to Elim. And and what happened? We have come and we have found the perfect truth. Oh, are there going to be more snipers? Oh, this is great. As they go across Exodus, there's people sniping at them all over the place. Doesn't make any difference how much you meditate. There'll always be a sniper. There'll always be a snake in the woodpile. There'll always be somebody sniping at you, somebody trying to beat you up. But you're going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And even to the point where you get near the promised land, people are going to tell you, oh, don't go near that place. Don't go near that church because there's demons and devils within you. And it says they sent out spies, and some of the spies come back and say, oh, they got giants. We don't want to go near them. And Joshua said, the hell with you. I'm going anyhow. Pow, he went. And they crossed the Jordan, and they made it to the promised land. Where did they come? They came from here all the way over to here. Do you know what has happened in your life? You know what has happened in my life because of religion? The people that were over here, we had religion, we have Christianity, we have Buddhism, we have Hinduism, we have Muslim. You know what we've got? Zip, right back here. We've made a journey the opposite direction. We've come from here, which is 90% of your brain. 90% is dormant. 10% you use because we gave it all up. And so with the Bible itself says, I want you to tithe. I want you to give 10%. It's not talking about 10% of your money. It's saying, I want you to give the 10% that you use. If you give me the 10% that you use, I'll give you the 90% that I use. Shut it down, meditate, and allow the melatonin to flow. Allow the pineal to explode, new life, new seed into your body and into your mind and into your soul. And we'll continue with the Exodus now that we've come to Elam, across the mountains to the Promised Land. Not bad. Thank you. And we're back to Exodus. And we're doing something that is involved in the Bible where bread comes out of the air, out of the sky. I was thinking of some tricky thing to do. If I could have little pieces of pumpernickel bread, on the ceiling and then pull a string and they fell down and all of this stuff. But I thought, no, anyhow, bread doesn't fall out of the sky. That's what we're talking about today. But there's something much more important than that, and I want you to consider this. Because what's becoming apparent to me as I'm looking at this is that the whole concept of the Bible and ancient documents is falling into line on the basis of this Greek mythology or mythological description of the human mind, which is taking the lowest point of consciousness as earth, the second stage as water, the third stage as air, the fourth stage is fire, and the final stage is the new mind. And what I'm seeing, and you might want to help me and look through different stories and see if you can develop the same concept. I'm starting to see this involved in just about everything. The movement from earth to water to air to fire. This is actually baptism. Most people who have been baptized have never been baptized because baptism is a Greek myth. It's out of Greek mythology. Your New Testament is Greek mythology. And it talks about taking the earth, which is your mind, into a second stage of consciousness through meditation, which is called water, rising out of that stage into a third stage, which is called air, rising out of that stage into the fourth stage, which is fire, and then developing the new mind. So this is really baptism. Baptism then becomes a psychological thing. Interestingly enough, as I'm looking at all of these various stories in the Bible, I'm seeing a lot of this as here. Remember, first of all, we had the people of Israel in bondage in Egypt at the lowest point, which was the earth. Then they crossed the Red Sea, and last week we're at the bitter water of Marah. Now what's happening this week? Bread is coming out of the sky, out of the air, and then in a couple of weeks we'll get to the point of fire on the mountain. So everything, and what's so interesting here is that this whole story has nothing to do with Jews running around in the desert, nothing to do with fires, nothing to do with any of this stuff, nothing to do with water. This is talking about your brain. This is talking about how your brain works. The whole thing is myth. And if, what I'd like you to do, if you haven't ever seen it, is go to the library and check out that series that Joseph Campbell did with Bill Moore called The Power of Myth. And one of the things that Joseph Campbell said is one of the most destructive things that's happened to society is we've lost our myth. We don't have it anymore. And we're taking all of these stories literally, and we miss it. Here's a document that's called Exodus that's talking about the development of your mind. It's talking about what goes on inside of your brain. It's talking about how you touch it, how you make it work, and we read it as real story. And we miss the whole thing because we don't understand the myth. So last week we had these people coming to this place of Mara, which is bitter water. In other words, it is water, it is what we think is truth, but it's bitter, because the fact is that when we followed this particular direction, we found out it wasn't true, and we became very, very bitter. And so that's where we were. But after we overcame that by putting the tree, or putting ourselves in the water of life, which is the second stage of consciousness, the water became sweet. And on page 60 in Exodus chapter 15 and verse 27, it says, we came to the place of Elim, and there were 12 wells of water. Well, that number 12 is perfected truth, because it symbolizes that of the zodiac, the 12 signs of the zodiac. There were 70 palm trees. Then that number 7 is the sign of the 7 chakras and divine intervention. So we came to this place of meditation. We came to this place of peace, and we came to this place of relaxation. Please, when you're studying Exodus, don't think of people coming across the desert. That never happened. The people that came across the desert and that wound up in Babylon were Bedouin tribesmen who were driven out of the hills. All of this stuff was created in the spiritual mind of magnificent people whose pineal glands were flashing in tremendous sync, and they were able to put down directions concerning the utilization of the human mind. It is talking about what goes on inside of your head. The ambushes that happened to the people of Israel, they happen inside of your head. All the time you get ambushed. And so here we get to a point in Exodus chapter 15 and verse 27 where you finally come to a place of peace. See? But you see, I have people that they'll write me and they'll call on the phone or whatever from all over the country. I got a letter from San Francisco. Lady said, I meditate. All I want is peace of mind. That's when you arrive at this place of Elim where there's, the 12 wells of water. But guess what? You'll only have it for a day or maybe 2 days. Sometimes you'll have peace of mind for a week. But then you'll get ambushed. Bang! Something will happen. It has to happen. It's just like, the ocean is calm and it's beautiful, and, you go down to the beach and you sit there and little kids are playing a stand, and all of a sudden here comes Felix, and now the ocean is churning up and so forth and so on. That's the nature of life. So when you look at peace of mind, if you have peace today, there's a pretty good chance you may not have it tomorrow. If you have it this week, all hell's liable to break out next week, because that's the way it is. And that's what keeps you alive. Because you know what's going to happen if you have a lot of peace? You're going to get bored, and you're going to create hell somewhere or other. I can't stand this. What's going on? Nothing. And you'll stir something up. You'll make somebody miserable, and they'll get mad at you, and then everybody will have a hell of a fight and say, hey, and then you'll feel good. Then you get recharged. That's the way it is. Such is the nature of things. So what has happened? Last week we came to this beautiful place of water. We came to this beautiful place of Elim. 12 wells of water, 70 palm trees, the 12 perfection, the 7 of the chakras, and we got peace of mind. But guess what? Here we go again. Look at Exodus chapter 16. And they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of sin. The wilderness of sin. See, remember, they could have stayed with the palm trees. They could have stayed with the 12 wells of water. But it's time to move on. It's time to see what's out there. It's time to see, what we can stir up. What's going on? And that's what we do. And that's the nature. That's the types of, that's what life is all about. So we move on to the wilderness of sin. Okay? We come to the point of emotional confusion. Remember, what is sin? Sin has nothing to do with sex, drugs, smoking, gambling, cursing, anything like that. Sin is the name of the moon god of Ur of the Chaldees. You look that up in any book of mythology. If you're down there looking for the Joseph Campbell tapes, you go in and you look up a book of mythology, and you look up the word sin, you find it's the moon god. The moon represents the emotions because it reflects back whatever is shown on it. It's metaphysics. So when you are in the wilderness of sin, you are in the absolute wilderness of confusion of the mind. You don't know where the heck you're at. You don't know. Everything looks the same. You don't know whether to turn to the left. You don't know whether to turn to the right. You don't know what to do. And what do we do when we are in the wilderness? What do we do when we are confused by our emotions? What do we do when our emotions inside of us have us to the point that we're not sure what is going on? Look at Exodus chapter 16, verse 2. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured. Oh, you do. I'm not fed up with this crap. I'm getting out of here, man. I ain't gonna put up with this crap. It stinks. It's not the way it used to be. You know what I'm talking about. You should know. You sit around, you know, oh, Miss Queen Bee. And that's exactly what's going on. Once there's this confusion, once there's this emotions inside of us is in charge, we murmur. How many of you have murmured in the last couple of weeks? Raise your hands. Everybody murmurs. Everybody murmurs. And then you know what they'll do? I'm not going down to that meditation. Jesus, I was all right before I started that crap. Everything was good, and then I started this. Oh, but now look at everything's all screwed up. The murmuring and complaining is the desperate straits we find ourselves in. Even though we're going in the right direction, this is the wild part. We're going in the right direction. But remember, even when you're going in the right direction, there are things ready to ambush you. Always there's somebody there's a snake under every rock ready to take a snipe at you. Now there's two things we got to look at here, which are interesting. See, look at what we've done here. We've taken this bizarre, stupid story of 40,000 Jews wandering around a desert looking for a street for 40 years. You know, 40 years! Isn't the time to give 40 years they're looking for this street. I mean, all you got to do is say, where does the sun rise? The sun rises in the east. Follow that way. Or go in the other, you know, but no, they're wandering. So, I mean, and what have we done to it? We've turned it into a story of psychological truth about the workings of the brain, the workings of the human mind. So, and last week, remember, we got to the water. And this week, you get to the air. You move from the water to that third stage, which is the air. Now, there are two things we have to look at in the next verse and put it in a proper context. Look at Exodus chapter 16 where you are in verse 4. And the Lord says, I will rain bread from heaven. All right? Bread is truth. Remember, Jesus is the bread of life. Metaphysically, bread is truth. That's what the word means. It's just like shoot a bull means have a conversation. Shot his mouth off means spoke out of turn. Bread means truth. Now, where is the bread going to come from? Heaven. All right? Now, in order to understand this psychologically, in order to understand this, you have to pinpoint the location of this place. What is heaven? Heaven is God's kingdom. I don't think anybody would have any qualms with saying that. So if heaven is God's kingdom, then we've got to locate it. And we can do it. And you can use this book of mythology. And don't you think for a minute that this isn't. And don't you think for a minute the New Testament is not Greek mythology. It is loaded with it. It is loaded with Plato. It is loaded with Pythagoras. It is loaded with Greek mythology. It is loaded even with the fact that the word Jesus is a Greek name of Greek mythology, meaning the mythical sun in the sky. But God's kingdom is portrayed very clearly. It says here that I will rain down bread from heaven. Keep your finger in the place where you are there and go to page 853. Okay, we want to find out the location of this heaven. We want to find out the location of God's kingdom. And it says in Luke chapter 17, look at verse 21. Look for yourself. It says in Luke chapter 17, verse 21, neither shall they say it's here or there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. I will rain down bread from heaven. I will bring truth down from the highest point of consciousness within you. Not, folks, most 99% of the people that go to church sit in the church and honestly believe that Entenmann's cupcakes and all the Dugan's bread fell out of the sky as they're walking around. Hey, I'll take a pumpernickel over here. Hey, not me. I don't drink that. I'm allergic to the gluten. I'll have some wheat over here. There's why. They actually believe bread fell out of the sky. Bread cannot fall out of the sky. People 100 years old don't have babies. Snakes don't talk. Fish, you can't live in their intestines. They puke and all of this stuff. These are myths. Why should we even have to sit and look what we've missed? Look what we've missed. But we've sat just like you are sitting, arms folded. Hey, bread fell out of heaven. God is good. God is good. Oh, God is good. Bread falling out, you know. It's even wrapped. It's even stamped. Don't use it after Thursday. It's got everything on it. Huh? That's another question. We'll get into that. That's all right. That's a whole other question. No, don't be sorry. No, that's good. That's fine. I'm glad you raised that. Okay. Okay. So the kingdom is, so bread or understanding comes down from your higher mind. Now the second point is, and this I want to show you, and this is very important. If you look in Exodus chapter 16, where you are, verse 4, I'll rain down bread from heaven, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them. Okay? That certain rate is your persistent, gradual change that occurs in you through meditation. You know, it is telling you, hey, it is not all going to happen to you tomorrow. You're not going to all of a sudden evolve into this thing the day after tomorrow. This is going to be a slow thing, a persistent rate every day. And now you come to that point of the 7 chakras. You remember? Revelation chapter 5:1, and I saw in the book, in the hand of him who sat on the throne, a book in his right hand, on the backside sealed with 7 seals. Now this is important, because what you're going to get into right now is back to where this David Koresh was looking at the time that all of that nonsense happened out there in Waco when he misinterpreted this. The 7 chakras are talking about, and the certain rate is you'll move through the first, you'll move through the second, you'll move through the third, the fourth, fifth, sixth, and you'll then enter into various parts. You open these seals and you'll correct various parts of the body and various parts of the mind and so forth and so on. But this is the interesting part. In Exodus 16:5 it says, and it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Okay, it shall be twice as much. So we move through the first, we move through the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth, and then on the 6th we receive twice as much, because the 7th then is nirvana. The 7th is that point of meditation, and twice 6 is 12, which is that point of perfection. And that point of perfection is when we take into ourselves from the higher mind that bread. The energy has raised itself up to the 6th chakra. And that next point is that point of the 7th of the crown chakra. That 7th is the point of the pineal gland of the brain. And that talks about then opening that pineal, opening that right hemisphere, and bringing you to that point of perfection, which is 12, the sign of the zodiac. So it's a wonderful truth. And look what it's saying here. The bread of the wisdom comes from within you when you are in the wilderness because of your emotions. Look up, and this will come, and it will come to you as it starts to rise up the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And on the 6th, where you will open the 6th seal. Do you remember that's what Koresh was working on? He was going to open the 6th seal. He didn't have the slightest idea what he was reading. He hadn't the slightest idea what was going on. And so he was looking for this thing of violence and this thing. And what happened? He was looking for fire. Don't you see? And this will happen here. See, they took it. They went to the water of Elam. They went to the water of the Red Sea. And now they find the air. Coming down out of the air is the bread. They've risen to the 3rd. And then they'll get to the mountain of fire. But he was looking at a literal fire. Because that's what he's taught by Christianity, that the world is going to be destroyed by fire. Look, remember I was telling you a little while ago about this? Everything in here is a progression from earth to water to fire. Remember, what does it say in the Bible? That Noah took the ark and the world was destroyed by water. But it says it won't be water, but fire next time. Because the movement is then in the same way, from the earth to the 2nd stage to the water, up to the air to the mountaintop, and then to the fire, to that 3rd stage. Okay? It's even in Moses. Moses, you take this idea of Moses, who didn't even exist. You take this idea of a person. You take this idea of a mind. And what happens to Moses? The word Moses means drawn out. out of the water. He was taken out of a little bark of water. Remember his mother put him in the water and he was 3 months? He's taken out of the water. He rises in consciousness up to the mountain. And what happens when he gets up to the mountain? He sees the burning bush. Everything is earth, water, air, fire. See, because it's talking about inside of you. Everything inside of you is this gradual movement upward from a point of total ignorance to a point of beginning to understand, to a point of separation from thought, to a point of being touched by that which is the fire, or that which is the spirit, or that which is the energy within you. Now, here's a wonderful and interesting truth on page 61 in Exodus chapter 16 and verse 8. And Moses said, "This shall be, when the Lord shall give you in the morning, in the evening, flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full." Okay. Now look at. Let's just hold on that point for a minute. As in verse 10, and as it came to pass, the whole congregation of Israel, they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in a cloud. And in verse 13, it came to pass that in the evening the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay around the host. Look what we're talking about. Just try to stop for a minute. In the evening, you will eat flesh. In the morning, you will eat bread. Okay? I just try to think of what's being said here for just a moment, okay? In the darkness, in the evening, that which is truth comes to you. You actually devour yourself. You actually devour this which is the flesh. You actually consume this which is the flesh by consuming your very own being in that point of the darkness of meditation. Inside of yourself, you actually consume this truth inside of the flesh. The flesh is devoured. The flesh is gone. You separate from that which is the body. The flesh is that which you eat in the evening. And then the light comes. And then the morning comes. And then you find the bread. You find the truth. You understand. It has nothing to do with birds flying around at night. We're going to feed on the bird. You're going to feed on the flesh in the evening, which means in the darkness of your meditation, you feed on the flesh. You separate from that which is the flesh, that which is the lower. It is devoured. And then, when that is devoured, the light comes. It has nothing to do with the real morning. It's talking about the light comes up, the sun comes up, the enlightenment comes up, the understanding comes up. And there is bread, there is manna, there is truth, there is understanding. We are murmuring. We are filled with desire for what? And meditation is in the evening, and the flesh is fed. And then the body cools down, the relaxation comes. And remember this quail. Birds that fly, birds are flying at the night, and you'll eat those birds, and those birds that fly in the night symbolize those thoughts which come from the divine place, deep within you, from the sky, from the air, from the third stage of consciousness. They send birds. From the third stage of consciousness, in the darkness of your meditation, they send that which you devour, which flies down from out of the air, which flies down from out of the higher mind, which then brings to you understanding and enlightenment of what your life is about. You see? See? Otherwise, what have you got? Some guy sitting at nighttime with birds, grabbing and eating birds. But here you're talking about something totally different. You're talking about your mind. You're talking about your brain. You're talking about yourself. And you're saying what is being told to you here is that if you'll only take the time. Geez, I don't know what else to do. I really don't. I can understand you don't believe me. I can understand. Who the heck? I'm standing in Forked River. Where the heck is that? In the basement of this guy's thing with a lady up here doing hair and nails and all this. What are you going to believe? Well, how could I be? It's ridiculous. But I'm telling you, I've told you for 7 years, and now it's in Newsweek magazine. It's all over the place. It's all over the television. And what is it telling you? If you will take yourself into the wilderness of your meditation, this bird will come, this quail will come, this food will come from a higher mind, and the melatonin will flow within you. And that this bread of this understanding of truth will come for your life, and you'll start to heal. Each one of you, people come in here and say, oh, I didn't get anything out of meditation. You could come in here with a microscopic cancer which could develop into something that could ravage through your body, and by sitting in a meditation the melatonin could erase it and wash it away, and you never know. and you'd walk out the door and say, I didn't get anything out of it. You haven't any idea. And it doesn't make any difference if the music is too loud or too slow. It doesn't make any difference if you had thoughts or you didn't have thoughts. When you shut down your mind and you shut down your eyes and you sit in that darkness, that pineal gland opens and the melatonin flows whether you think you got anything out of it or not. You don't even know. You go to bed, you eat. What happens? Your body starts digesting your food. Does it say, excuse me? Would you wake up? Do you mind if we digest? It doesn't ask you for any of that stuff. Your hair grows, not as fast as it used to, but your hair grows. It doesn't ask permission for any of this stuff to happen. It just happens. It's what, yes. You have to stand up so they can see an answer.
I want to tell everybody about that lady who knows nothing about meditation.
Well, then tell them. It's good.
Somebody that's coming to me and she really has no knowledge of anything that's taught here in the church. She had never meditated before. And so I told her to meditate. I gave her a Kataro tape, and she started, and she could feel this energy in the middle of her forehead. And she got a little bit nervous, saying, what's happening to me? I'm not doing it right. I'm doing something wrong. So when I saw her last week, she told me, and I said, that's your single eye, the seat of the soul. She didn't even realize it, but she had opened that pineal gland.
That's right. And if somebody had instructed her how to do it, she'd have never got it. She'd have never found it. You have to go in just like a child. And that's what is being said. You mean it doesn't, does it take, how much time does it take? Does it take for you to sit down for a half hour? Does it take for you to understand? What in this world is so important that you can't finally understand? You know what to do with your, look, let me tell you something. Take your hand. Do you know how to close your finger? Do you know how to move? Do you know how to move your leg? Do you know how to move your leg? Blink your eye. How do you blink? You know how to do all this stuff? Do you know what? Do you know what with your mind, what's in there? You don't know fakakta. You don't know anything. The most important thing right in the middle of your brain, you don't know what to do with it. Absolutely don't know what to do with it. It's like your steering wheel in your car. It's like if you get in your car and there's no steering wheel. And you know most of those religions up there, up and down the street, they'll tell you, don't go near that. Don't go near that. It's like you're sitting in a car and saying, well, I don't have a steering wheel because my pastor doesn't allow it. My pastor doesn't believe in steering wheels. How do you drive? We just do. And we crash into everything. But you don't understand. And so it comes out in Newsweek, and it comes out in all of these things, and it's in all of these, and doctors know about it, and hospitals know about it. And you sit there and you don't have the slightest idea that the most critical thing, which was talked about by Jesus, was talked about by Buddha, was talked about Christian, all this book talks about is what goes on inside of your brain, and people haven't the slightest idea. They don't even know they have anything. And I'll tell you something. You didn't even know you had a pineal gland. You didn't know it. You hadn't the slightest idea you had a pineal gland in your brain. Didn't know it. Most important thing in your body. And you know what René Descartes, the father of modern philosophy from France, said? The place in a human being where God meets the person is at the pineal gland of the brain. And now all of these guys say, we find out what this is for. No, you didn't find out what this is for. This was given thousands of years ago. Jacob knew what it was for. But you're sitting in this room looking at me. You don't have to come here. It's stronger when you're in with a group in meditation, but you can do it wherever. But for God's sakes, it is the most important part of your body. And you know what? It is like you've gone through your whole life. You know what would happen if you'd gone through your whole life with your arm in a sling? What good would it be to you? You know what you've done? You've gone through your whole life with your pineal gland in a sling. And it's atrophied. And it's like a little old fakakta. It's a little old shriveled up piece of nothing. But you know what you can do now? You can exercise. And you know what? It's tough to exercise. I got on Joan's bicycle the other day. What is this? I got to lose weight. I'll die. It's hard. So you're taking this little thing, which is the most important part of you, which will put you into contact with the universe, and it's shriveled up, and you start exercising. I didn't get anything. I didn't get anything. Well, how old are you? 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60? You've paid nothing. You've had it in a sling. Take it out of a sling. Exercise. Exercise, exercise, and it starts to strengthen and strengthen and strengthen. And pretty soon it'll start to harden. See, it's sandy. The pineal gland in your brain, most of you, it's sandy. It's unregenerated. It's not disciplined. It's sandy. And Jesus says if those who build their house on sand, when the storm comes, it washes out. You know what happens when a storm comes into your life? Chaos. Chaos. But he says if you build your house on rock, when you exercise this thing in meditation, it becomes like a rock, and the house will not fall. Okay? Now, before you, we're going into this one thing. Before you go on, it's necessary to consider the human brain. And your brain, I don't care if you're a man, woman, boy, girl, whatever you are, it's no different than anybody else's. This is you. Not bad. Little bow tie, huh? Okay? That's your part. 10% of your brain. That is what you think with. The rest of it is off limits. You know what this is in the boy? This is the Garden of Eden. You know? How do I know that? Because they built the garden eastward in Eden. Whenever you look north, east is always on the right. That's God's part. You're not allowed in there. Huh? Now, let me tell you something. You have 10%. You can take only into yourselves on that left side, that 10%. You don't take anything here. You take this side. This is where you do all your conniving, all your finagling, all of your ranting and raving, all of your murmuring, all of that goes on right here. And it happens in that 10%. See? Now, when you shut this down, you turn on this side. That's why Jesus said, cast your net to the right side. Because when you shut down that left side, you turn on the right. After you meditate, you act on what was given to you in meditation. But it's not over here. Now it's over here. But still only 10%, Albert. It's still only the 10%. It's good stuff. It came from here, but it's still only the 10%. See? So you take into you that which is the 10%. See? That's what it says. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my kingdom. In other words, you give that 10%, you turn this on. Information then comes to you from this side, and you begin to understand. Now, understanding that, let's go back to this lesson. The manna is on the ground. The bread fell out of heaven. The manna is on the ground. The truth is in your mind. Now, a wonderful clue. Look at Exodus chapter 16. You see it? Look at verse 16. This is the thing with the Lord command. Gather every man according to his eating, an omer for every man. An omer is 1/10. 1/10. 10%. That's what you get. That's what you get. In other words, when that bread falls, you will take it, and it will take it into that which is your part, that 10th. That's yours. Now, you know what? Golly, Jesus, I know, for God's sakes. You know, do you know how stupid? All of a sudden you're smart. And you look at you're smart, you know all of this stuff. And you go to people and say, guess what? Let me tell you the truth about all of this stuff. And they say, oh, you're a cult. You've been hanging down in the basement of that screwy guy with the blue shirt on. Ah, don't stay away from that guy. See, because all of theirs is where? They didn't have any bread. They never ate the quail. They never ate the flesh at night, so they couldn't get into the bread in the morning. They don't know. And so they sit here with everything that they've ever had, but they've never got what came from here. Here, gather 10. Take 10%. So see what it says right there? In Exodus chapter 16:16, it says right there, hey, gather every man an omer. Take every man for that which is in his 10. So this is you and me, and we take in that 10% from God. Now understand, I want to tell you something. This is very interesting. Verse 18, and they gathered, and he that gathered much had nothing left over, and he that gathered little had no lack. In other words, everything that you get in meditation is geared just for you. He might need 5,000, he'll get 5,000. She might need 15, she'll get 15. Just exactly. She might not be able to handle 5,000. He might go nuts if he only gets 15. It'll get exactly. And he won't need any more, and she won't have a lack of everything. It'll be just right. See? That's why when people try to tell you this is the way it is, it may not be for you. It may be for them, but it may not be for you. I don't tell anybody because I don't want to screw you up, because I want you to gather, and you gather from within yourself spiritually, and what you gather is right smack on the money what you need. See? And you may go out, and I'll tell you, listen, this is how you do it, so you can gather 20, but you may need to gather 2,000. And if you don't pay any attention to me, when you go into this beautiful desert of meditation, you'll gather 2,000. But I'll tell you something, if you do it my way, you'll only gather 20, and you'll have missed 1,980. Don't believe this stuff. Understand this stuff. But for God's sakes, for you, and for you want to avoid cancer, you want to avoid heart disease, for your children. Will you read the papers? Will you read Newsweek? Will you listen to the doctors? Will you listen to the scientists? Will you listen to Jesus? Will you listen to Buddha? Will you listen to Krishna? And will you go in and will you let the pineal open? Will you exercise it? And will you let the melatonin flow? It's up to you. See? And so there's an interesting statement now here. Now listen to this real quick. 16:19. Look what it says, 16:19. Let no man leave it till the morning. Some left it and it bred. In verse 20, some of them left it and it bred worms. And what this is telling you is you must continually take this within yourself. The lack of continuing meditation can cause that which was given to you to dry up and go away. You can't let it sit. You can't say, well, it's got to be a part of your life now. You go to the bathroom, you got to meditate. You drink, you got to meditate. You eat, you got to do it just like you do that. You walk. These people get up, see, and they get on the treadmill, and they go, hey, and they're all, but then they sit down, and then they say, look at the shape I mean. Watch it. When I was in the Navy, we used to have a new, guy told me, hey, I was posing for a picture. Don't pose like that. Don't pose like that. So I had to pose for the picture. So we sit, pose for a picture. Put your arm like this, then bring your fist under your arm and go like that. Like that. Hey, look at me. Because I was skating, we weighed 124 pounds. But boy, did I have muscles. Yeah. Because it was, everybody wants to be in shape. But understand your pineal is a wreck. And you got to get it, you got to open it up. You got to get it going. Now, really quick, because I know you're late. Okay. In verse 21, look what it says. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. When the sun waxed hot, it melted. The sun is simply an allegorical suggestion that the physical solar fire, the passion from the solar plexus, the passion of the flesh is capable of destroying the gift that came from the higher mind. You've got to keep it flowing in the meditation, or that which is the energy that burns within you in the lower part will burn it up. It's got to be constant. See? And look at verse 23. And he said, this is the day which the Lord said, tomorrow is the holy day. Tomorrow is the Sabbath. You see, remember that guy's picture up there? Tomorrow is the Sabbath. That's the 7th, the day of rest. That's the point of meditation. The 7th, the Sabbath, is the point of meditation. It says you can take nothing into the holy city on the Sabbath. When you reach the 7th, you can take nothing into the right side. You can take none of your thoughts, none of your ideas, none of your techniques. But it says here, tomorrow is the whole, and what it means, at this point, the gift will not be destroyed. Look what it says. Please, just stop for a second. Tomorrow is the rest. Bake that which you will take today. See that you will see that you remain overlaid up for you to keep until the next morning. And they did, and it did not stink, neither was there any worms. Meaning at this point, when you reach the 7th, that gift will not deteriorate. That gift will not spoil. That gift will not be burnt up by the emotions, because it is now dwelling in the higher place. It is dwelling in the holy place. It is dwelling in the high place of consciousness. And I'll show you something interesting. And sometimes when you think it's time for you and you're going to meditate and you're going to follow this technique and that technique, let me show you something. And this should put it into perspective. Exodus 16:25. And Moses says, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath, and you shall not find it in the field. In other words, what you got yesterday, what you were given, you better consume that into you, because today you shall not find it in the field. The thoughts are gone. The mind is virgin. It is the day of the sun. It is the pineal. It is Sunday. 6 days, it says in verse 26, and you shall gather it. That's the mental activity. Look again, because I don't want to go too fast. 6 days, see verse 26? 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. That's the beautiful part. You work your way through your meditation, and you go home, or you listen to the music, or you focus, you do whatever you do, and you run, and you bring this energy, and the energy starts to move up the first energy, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth. But when you get to that place of the 7th, it's gone. There's nothing there. You can't see anything. You can't feel anything. You can't do anything. It's sealed with 7 seals. And in Exodus verse 16, verse 27, it says, it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day to gather, and they found none. Some went out on the 7th, to gather, but they found you can't. It's not up to you anymore, folks. It doesn't make any difference how hard you try. It's not up to you. It's simply going to happen or it's not going to happen. It opens up within you. It's a beautiful point that opens up within you, and it's strictly that which of God. But it says in verse 30, finally the people rested on the seventh day. When you come into meditation, sometimes I just feel like going up and talking up in the sky because I don't know. And I know, you've got to do what you want to do. You've got to but look at this great deal I'm giving you. Go in the bathroom and do it. Run the water. They're never going to know what you're doing in there. It doesn't mean you have to join anything. It doesn't mean you have to spend anything. But it does mean you've got to start to take not only this ancient wisdom, but you've got to start to understand that, which is the new science and the understanding of this thing that's going on within you. See? So it says in verse 33, this is the commandment. Fill an omer. In other words, take that which is the tenth. See? Take that which is the truth. Not only for yourself, but take it so that you may see the bread that I have found in the wilderness to keep for generations. For your kids! Your kids that you have at home have a pineal gland that's active, but you know what? Every time, every day that they don't meditate, it grows a little weaker and a little weaker and a little weaker. And then before you know it, it becomes just like yours and mine. Nothing. Because we don't know. But you do know now. You should know. And just in case, so that you may know that what I told you is true, look at verse 36. An omer is the 10th part of an ephah, which is measurement. It says in verse 36, an omer is the 10th part. So here you came. You came out of the water of bitterness. And in that bitterness, you raised yourself up into the air, up into the sky, up into the higher mind. And there that bird came, that quails came, and you devoured the flesh within yourself. And then the sun came out, and you began to understand truth. You began to understand reason. You began to feel within yourself. Finally, you know why you're alive. You know what the purpose of you. Maybe finally you'll understand the person sitting next to you. Maybe finally they'll understand you. Maybe finally you'll be able to look at somebody and say, you understand, and they understand. Maybe finally we'll be able to understand each other in this world. Maybe finally the universe will understand. Maybe finally we'll understand nature and the animals, and we'll understand the stars, and we'll understand the mountains and the water. All of this, look, you're trying to understand, they're trying to solve the problems of the world, and you don't even understand what you've got in the center of your own head. We're trying to figure out how to save everything, and we don't even know what's inside of us closer than our breath in the center of our head. We have neglected it, and we've listened to all of the educators who didn't know, and all of the priests who didn't know, and all of the ministers and evangelists who didn't know, and all of the religious people who didn't know, and finally you get to this point where you know, and now you're going to sit, or you're going to take yourself all by yourself, none of my business, none of anybody else's business, but you're going to start paying attention to yourself, and you're going to start touching that holy place. And that's when the quail and the manna will come. And that's when the enlightenment will come. And then you'll do what these people do. You'll pick yourself up and you'll continue your trek across the desert of the right hemisphere towards that promised land. And you'll come to the mountain, and you'll come to that mountain of fire, and you'll come to that spiritual explosion on the mountain. And the mountain within you will shake and quake. And then what they call the 10 Commandments, which you will understand like nobody has understood them before in this room, those 10 Commandments will come down to you carved in the very stone of your mind for you. And you'll know exactly what you're to do and how you're to do it. Okay, thank you. We're doing Exodus, in which we're looking at the symbolisms that are contained within these stories and bringing them to us, whether we talk about Jesus, whether we talk about the Old Testament or what. We're looking at the symbolisms. We're looking at mythology. We're looking at parables and allegory. And what I'd like to do with you for just a moment is try to reintroduce you to something that Joseph Campbell in his programs with Bill Moyer said that we have all lost, which is myth, the power of myth. We have no myth. And when you have no myth, you don't understand ancient writings because you take them literally. And you lose myth. If I say Jesus is a myth, people, oh, you know, he said Jesus doesn't exist. Not at all. That's proves that Jesus does exist by understanding myth, because then you understand, what does the word Jesus mean? What does it mean to you as a human being in the reality of it? But you have to understand myth. And what I thought of as a way to try to help us understand myth and what I'm talking about and what the Bible's trying to convey to you is to create a myth. And let's use as the premise for it the idea that exchanging ideas brings wisdom. Wisdom, enlightenment. In other words, if there's an exchange of ideas, out of that exchange of ideas may come wisdom and understanding. That's a good word, too. So, for instance, if she gets together with her and they sit down and they exchange ideas, or if two of you get together, 3 or 4 of you get together, and you have an exchange of ideas, out of that exchange of ideas, there may come understanding. You may become enlightened about something that maybe you didn't know before, all right? So that's one premise we'll use, that exchanging ideas brings wisdom and understanding. Let's also use another premise, that revealing a secret can bring or cause problems. So exchanging ideas between 2 or 3 can bring understanding, but revealing secrets can also cause problems. So let's use that as the premise. And let's create a myth, if we can, totally within the realm of your understanding it very simply. Let's take 2 people, Tom and Pete, okay? And what we understand if we're writing a Bible or whatever we're writing is that Tom and Pete go out and they shoot the bull, okay? They shoot the bull, you know, bang, bang, and there, you know, the big black animal. You can picture this in your mind. Guy's got a rifle, he shoots the bull. They're shooting the bull. As a result of sacrificing this animal, as a result of killing this bull, God gives them understanding. They receive understanding and wisdom. Why? Because they were shooting the bull. Okay. Now, what they received as far as understanding was knowledge about a friend of theirs whose name is Fred. And what they, between the discussion or from shooting the bull, the understanding that came to them is the fact that this is something they had been concerned about, but now they're pretty sure of it. Fred is off the wall. Now, in other words, he's not on the wall where he should be. He's off the wall. What they decided is they really don't want to tell too many people that Fred's off the wall, because this was given to them as divine understanding by sacrificing the bull, shooting the bull. They shot the bull, and they received understanding about Fred. Fred's off the wall. Keep this secret. Well, it was okay, but after a while, Tom met Marie. And Tom told Marie, and Marie spilled the beans. From shooting the bull, the wisdom was given to them that Fred was off the wall. And now Marie spilled the beans. As soon as Marie spilled the beans, the cat was out of the bag. Okay? And when the cat left the bag, it caused great sorrow, because now everybody knew about Fred. They didn't know, you see, it wasn't that anybody told anything. It was when the cat left the bag, then everybody knew. So what do we have? We shot the bull. Understanding came because we shot the bull. The understanding that we received about a human being because we shot the bull was that the human being was no longer on the wall. The human being was now off the wall. When this was revealed to another person, that person spilled beans. When the beans hit the floor, the cat ran out of the bag, and that caused all of this horror because now everybody knew. And the prime reason, understand that the prime reason that everybody knew this secret was because what? A cat left the bag. Well, as long as the cat stays in the bag, there's no problem. But as soon as the cat ran out of the bag, it presented a serious problem. that's a myth. Every bit of it is true. Because what is this said? Tom and Pete had a conversation. And in the conversation, they arrived at a conclusion that Fred was not behaving normally. They didn't want to tell anybody this because this would cause problems with Fred and his family. But Tom told it to Marie. Marie went and told other people. She talked out of turn. And as soon as she talked out of turn, it made this knowledge open to everybody and caused a lot of problems. But how was it referred? How was it transmitted to you? By shooting the bull, this person was off the wall, so she spilled the beans and the cat ran out of the bag, and it caused all the problems. Now, this is the problem with you when you read a Bible. Most people will read exactly like that and take it literally, and they'll talk about sacrificing a bull. They'll talk about fish swallowing people or talking snakes. They're talking about somebody who literally spilled beans. They'll talk about animals talking and running out of bag, and they'll take it literally, and they'll come in and say, I believe every word of the Bible. And they miss the whole thing. And that's what happens when you sit down and you take something like a Veda of Krishna, a Sutra, a Buddha, you take the Bible, the Quran, whatever. These are spiritual things. These are occult things, and you take them literally. And most religious people do exactly that. And that's where you wind up with. You wind up with knowing two things. Because they shot a bull, and you just picture somebody with a gun shooting a bullet into a bull's head. Because they shot a bull, this woman eventually dropped a bag of pinto beans on the floor, and it caused a cat to run out, and everybody got upset. Is it any different than saying that Adam and Eve ate an apple and the whole world went down the toilet? When you don't know what you're doing, and you're handling ancient myths and you're handling ancient scriptures, that's exactly what happens. And the world winds up in a mess because they don't know what they're looking at. And now, understanding that myth that we just went through together, let's go and take a look at let's go and take a look at Exodus and understand what you're looking at is a myth. Just not a whole lot different than what we've looked at right here. It's a myth. It's people wandering around in the desert for 40 years. Just the idea that there are people wandering around in the desert for 40 years should tell you that's a myth. I mean, how are you going to wander around anywhere for 40 years? I mean, you're looking for a street for 40 years. Okay, go to page 62. And on page 62, if you look in Exodus chapter 17, Exodus chapter 17, and it says, all of the congregation of the children of Israel wandered. Now, when you talk about wandering in the desert, that's your life. That's what you've done all of your life. You've wandered in the desert. When we wander in the desert, it means we go through periods of confusion where we don't know which way to turn. That's wandering in the desert. And just think to yourself, do you ever go through periods of confusion where you don't know which way to turn? Obviously. All the time. And if you come to an oasis today, well, it's because today's Sunday. But remember, tomorrow's Monday, and you'll be back out in the desert again, and you'll say, where the heck am I? I don't know which way to go. I don't know which way to turn. We're on a constant search for purpose. We're on a constant search to find out every day you get a little older. Every day you get more aches and pains. Every day you start seeing things, the job isn't working out, this isn't working out, and you wonder, what the heck is the purpose? What's the sense of all of this? And then you've been raised by a religious group that takes all of this bizarre stuff literally and has arrived at the conclusion that the purpose of it all is for you to go to some other planet after you die. What's the sense of that? I'm on this planet, I'm alive. Let's do it here. The heck do I got to go someplace else after I die? With everybody that's religious. I don't want to go. Who wants to go and live for the rest of your life with a bunch of religious people singing hymns? Nobody wants to do that. Well, that's ridiculous. Obviously, it's stupid. And so then you say, well, what is it that we're searching for? We're wandering in a desert. Okay, in this particular instance, look where we're coming from. Chapter 17, and look at verse 6. Chapter Exodus chapter 17, look at verse 1. We're journeying from the wilderness of sin. There's an interesting word. Can be anything from smoking to playing the slots at Trop World, to women wearing slacks, to having sex, to eating too much, to drinking too much, to going to church too little. All this junk is supposed to be sin, when actually all anybody has to do is go to a library, pull out a book on mythology, and you'll find that sin is the moon god of Ur of the Chaldees. The moon god. In other words, sin represents the moon, and the moon metaphysically represents the emotions because it reflects what's ever shown on it. What is sin? Dwelling in the emotions. That's what sin is. It has nothing to do with drinking or smoking or that's the things people do to have a good time, I guess. I don't know. But what's that got to do with it? You know why that's sin? Because they were looking for things to get that most people did to say this is off limits so that they could get you to follow them. So anything you like to do, they say you shouldn't do that. Why? Because it's a sin. Oh, who said so? We did. Oh, okay, hallelujah. Let's sing Amazing Grace. Now, you say, everything you could possibly do to have a good time is a sin. There is nothing you can't think of if they're not going to say it's a sin. And all actually it means, it's a psychological thing, it's you're dwelling in your emotions. Your emotions are controlling you. But here we've come from the wilderness of sin. And look what it portrays the story of verse 2. The people said to Moses, give us water that we can drink. They're thirsting to such an extent that they're prepared to revolt against the leader. Do you know why you're sitting here listening to me in the Vito's basement? Because you're thirsty. And you haven't had a drink all of your life, and the stuff that you've been fed as water from these people is bitter. And so now you get to a point where you introduce yourself into Greek mythology, which is earth, water, air, fire, the new mind. There are the 5 stages of consciousness in Greek and in most of the cultures of the world. Earth, water, fire, air. And what it means is you take the earth, which is your mind, you in meditation elevate to the 2nd level of consciousness, which is water, which will then bring you up to the 3rd level of consciousness, which is air, which will bring you to the 4th level of consciousness, which is fire, and then the new mind. Or as you know it, what do they do because they understand this literally? They'll take you down to the creek, stick your head in water, you'll come out of the water, and they'll say you're filled with the Spirit. Actually, all you've got is the flu because you got all this polluted water in your nose. Has nothing to do with it. Everybody that's ever been baptized in water has never been baptized. Do you honestly believe there is some lunatic God on some planet who's not going to like you unless your head gets wet? What's that got to do with anything? Boy, that turns me on, Cindy, when your head gets wet. I'm going to forgive you for everything. But on the other hand, what about if you do take the lower mind and in meditation lift it to a point of understanding in the 2nd realm of consciousness and then rise up into this realm where you plug into that which we call God or creation? Now you've really got a baptism, don't you? And that's what it says in the Bible. We will rise to meet Jesus in the air. But what do they have in Christian bookstores? You can see it all over the place. Postcards of people flying out of cars and flying in between airplanes and going up into the sky. And they call it the rapture. The rapture is a Buddhist principle, which means raising your consciousness. That's all it is. But when you misunderstand it, you actually think people are going to literally fly through the sky. So what's happening here? Here you are with your lower mind. In this particular story, you have a tremendous thirst. For what? Water, for truth, which is in the 2nd level of consciousness. You need to have truth. You've got to find out what the heck is going on. You've come out of Egypt. You've come through the Red Sea of the emotions. You're continuing your journey, and now you're moving out of it. But you're searching for truth, see? And when you cross the Red Sea, as they did here in this particular myth, remember, that isn't the deliverance. That's just overcoming one encounter. You've overcome an encounter with the emotions. You're heading in the right direction, see? But there's barriers. There's tremendous barrier. And the greatest barrier to you to understand is religion. And the reason religion is a barrier is because it has no concept of myth, it has no concept of parable, it has no concept of allegory, and it defies the very Bible in which Jesus says in Mark 4:11, all these things are done in parables. It defies the very Bible in which Paul says in 2 Corinthians, be not a minister of the letter, don't take this stuff literally. It defies the very Bible in which Paul says in Galatians 4:24 of the Old Testament, which things are an allegory. It defies the very Bible which in Proverbs 1:6 says wisdom is understanding the dark sayings of the ancients. And it defies the very Bible in which God says in Psalm 78:2, I will utter strange things in parables and dark sayings of old. That's myth. And that's what's in here. And so we sit down and we take those very things literally. If it says they shot a bull or they sacrificed a bull, that's what we believe. They shot a bull. We have no concept that what they're talking about is sacrificing that which is the very physical aspects of our nature. So I want you to look too when you have this search for water. There's a problem too, because you always have two aspects. There's a duality in everything. There's water which is the higher, which is truth, and there's water which is the lower, which is distortion. It's truth, but it's distorted, okay? And so here, then, there's a word in the ancient Hindu, it's called tanha, T-A-N-H-A, and it means longing for something. And there's a guru who said, he who is without thirst and without sin, I mean, there is no desire. We have overcome the emotion. He who is without thirst and is without sin has broken all the thorns of life. And that's what was so beautiful when you sit in a room with this guy that's accumulated all of this millions of dollars, and he says, honestly, really, you could say, I don't really care about this stuff. It has no meaning anymore. There's a word called transmigration, and transmigration means moving from one body to another, continuing the karmic chain from one life to another, which all of us have unfortunately experienced. You see, the problem is this, and we learned this last night from Mustafa, and he made an extremely good point, and I would share it with you. What are you doing here on this earth? You are here to sacrifice yourself to clean up the mess that was made by all the people that came before you. That's exactly why you're here. You didn't create all of this lunacy. You didn't create all of this war and all of this. It was here thriving when you popped out on the pan wherever you came. Oh, we're going to name her. We're going to name him. Here you are. And what is your job? Your job is to enter in and sacrifice yourself into the spiritual realm to bring salvation to this nightmare that was created long before you ever got here. So that's it. There's a thing called Sudha Nipada. It's a man accompanied by thirst for a long time does not overcome this transmigration. So this thirst is this desire. This thirst is this thing of sitting in here and just waiting to die. Absolutely, you accomplished nothing. How old are you? If you were to sit, just to think to yourself, say to yourself how old you are, what have you accomplished? And when you start thinking of your life, you know what it is? A blur. It's a blur. It is trying to survive. It is exactly what a wildebeest does in Africa. Watching all the time for what's coming at you. Watching all the time for an ambush. And trying to survive. And every so often getting bitten. Something bites you in the rear end, something bites you in the front, and you go, oh, what the hell? Screaming and fighting and yelling and shouting and carrying on and electing people. We go into places and we elect them and we say, yes, you're going to be the salvation, and the whole thing is screwed up. And we run back in the next time we close the thing and elect this guy. And he's going to try to unscrew the thing that the other guy screwed. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. Look at page 493. And look about this thing of thirst. Let me show you something. It's in the book of Psalms. Page 493 of what our desire. What is your desire? What should be your desire? What is your purpose in being even alive? There must be a purpose, a reason for it. But you're not going to find it listening to me, and you're certainly not going to find it listening to this bizarre stuff that passes as religion. You've got to find it inside of yourself. You've got to find it in the nature of myth. You've got to find it in the nature of nature itself. Psalm 63, verse 1. O God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there is no water. You know where the dry and thirsty land is where there is no water? Your mind. There is only one dry and thirsty land where there is no water. Your mind. Where it is absolutely dry. And this is where you thirst. So you see, the scripture of these people crossing the desert proves the use of the desert and thirst as a yearning for spirit. What did we show you before we started this thing? He shot a bull. He's off the wall. The cat got out of the bag. She spilled the beans. Here they are thirsting in a desert. And the desert is between your ears. And if you listen, sometimes you can hear jackals in there screaming, and you can hear snakes hissing, and all kinds of weird stuff right smack here between your ears. And now you're thirsting in a dry, dry land because you have struggled in confusion, trying to find a way to make some sense out of the very existence that you had. You're sitting here. How in God's name did you wind up sitting in this place after all of these years when you've accomplished nothing? What was that? Oh. You never know. Look at page, go to page 537. Page 537 is Psalm 143. You're in here for a half hour. Get a little bit involved in it. Get a little bit into this because I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you the solution in it. I'm going to show you something exciting. So get a little involved in it, you know. You're going to walk out of here, and for the first time since you've ever been anywhere, coming and listen to anybody, you're going to walk out and know something. You're going to know something that's meaningful to your life. You're going to get an instruction written in myth. You're going to get an instruction written just like we talked about shooting the bull and the cat's out of the bag. Could you ever think of such a thing? Why is everything screwed up? Because the cat's out of the bag. And right away, you don't even think of a pussycat. You don't think of a brown bag with a pussycat. Oh, geez, if the cat only stayed in the bag, this wouldn't have happened. You're not stupid. But when you go to churches and you get involved in religion, they require one thing of you. Check your brains at the door. Come in and be stupid. Okay? Give you a songbook. Sing these words. Okay? Get up when we say get up. Get down when we say get down. Okay? The man was swallowed by a fish. The fish puked. And the evangelist came out. Okay. The two people were in the garden, didn't know they didn't have any pants on. The lady didn't have any panties on. The man had no shorts on. But they were saved, and they got their panties because they found a talking snake. Okay. It's all right. I believe that. It's all right with me. It's a good church. It's a good church. Not only that, but the water was going to come and cover the whole earth. And so a guy made an ark and got two of every kind of animal in the boat. Ooh, yeah, I agree with that. In fleas, two fleas. Everybody went in the boat. Two ticks. Like the ticks were married. One was named Tick, the other was named Tuck. I had to do it. No. No, but I mean, this is the stuff. And you know the worst part of all this? This is the foundation of our culture. And we all say, we got to get back to the Bible. We got to get back to God. Get away from it. Jesus. Anyhow, go to page 537, Psalm 143. Remember, these people are wandering around the desert for 40 years looking for this guy's house, and they can't find it, and it's 40 years later, and they're still looking. It says Psalm 143, verse 6, and what does it say? It says, I stretch forth my hands unto you. My soul thirsts after you as a thirsty land, Selah. I said to Mustafa last night, it's interesting. He said, Selah means prayer. That's Muslim. Prayer. Selah is my prayer. In other words, I'm thirsty. Say. Now, how can we see this all? I thirst. In other words, we're trying to find out. We're trying to get something into our heads that some degree of sanity into this life. I mean, ever since I've been alive, people dropping bombs on one another and putting people in prisons and attacking people. Now they got everybody's on drugs and they're all shooting and everything. For what? Why are you shooting? Why are you dropping bombs? I don't even know the people. But you know, I belong to this group. And he belongs to this group. And that group is bad. And that group, why? Do you know this guy? No. I don't know them. But my leader said they were bad. When I was a little kid, I went to Catholic school. Across the street from us was a Jewish temple. And when they used to congregate out there, we had leaders who would tell us those people were the ones that killed Jesus. And I used to think, man, you're going to get yours, pal. Killing Jesus, huh? They're bad. I didn't know anything. And I'm in a religious school to learn the foundation of morality. And I am told, see those people over there? They're the ones that killed Jesus. Great. This is great. Don't miss church. You don't want to miss any of this stuff. And then 40, 30, 20 years later, you've raised a bunch of rapists, serial killers, drug people, all kinds of maniacs, violent people, and you don't remember about the things you taught them in Sunday school, about their heavenly Father is going to bomb the world and send everybody to hell, and these people are evil, and the Muslims are no good, and the Buddhists and all of these people are evil, and they're going to hell. You don't remember all this stuff. Maybe you were even the Sunday school teacher, and you brought little Junior in and taught him this filth. And passed it off as, oh, we don't want him in a Sunday school. The one thing that would have helped this entire world is if everybody had missed Sunday school. Because you don't teach violence and hate to little children and not have to pay back. And you're paying back big time. Let's go to page 816 for just a minute in John chapter 4. And in John chapter 4 and verse 13. And let me tell you, let me reiterate, and I'm not blaming the Bible. The Bible is written in symbols. Okay? I don't believe in shooting bulls. But I do believe in having conference. What do you mean it's not in there? Get rid of that book, it's not in there. Chapter 4, the book of John is not in there? 867, I said. Oh, and if I said 816, it was just to see if you were paying attention.
The beans hit the fan.
Thank you, Ruth. Ruth knows. Okay, this is Jesus talking, and what does he say? Whoever drinks of this water, meaning the water outside, the lower water, will thirst again. Okay, verse 13. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. That's the water inside. And what is that water? Please, understand something. What you've just read is Greek mythology. It is not English, it is not Jewish, it is not written in Jerusalem, it is not written in England, it is written in Greece. It is part of Plato, it's part of Pythagoras, it's part of all of the ancient Greek myths. They specifically say you must drink of the water. It is the second stage of consciousness, which is water. In other words, you must elevate your consciousness to the second level, then you are drinking water. And guess what? When you rise in meditation to that second level of consciousness, you will see the Christ. And what will he be doing? Walking on what? The water. You see? It's talking about that second level of consciousness. That second stage of consciousness. In other words, and what is this? Is there water in you? Yes, but not to do this. Is there electric? You know, what is all this talking about? I'll tell you something, and this may be a shock to you. There is no God in you. There is no spirit in you. There is no devil in you. Inside of you is a bunch of stuff, all kinds of blood and hormones and electric lines and all kinds of stuff. If you blow up, they'll find stuff all over the place. There is nothing holy. But this is the secret. If you understand and you plug in, the stuff in there will come together in an electrical, beautiful way, and it will make you into God consciousness. because of the interactions of the electrons and the interactions of the glands. And all this is doing is telling you, if you touch a part of your brain that you haven't touched yet, something will happen. Well, what will happen? Well, let's call it water. We'll use a code word for a level of consciousness. We'll use a code word for a level of the vibrations in your... If you reach that level, something will happen to you. And we're going to call that level, for the means of reference, water. When you get to the water, your thirst, we'll use the word thirst to say you'll be satisfied, you'll understand. Nothing is going to happen inside of you. There's no water, there's no thirst. You have electricity and all of these things moving around. But when you learn how to use your body and your mind. Look, you go to Jack LaLanne's and you go like this. And you go and you do all of this stuff, and you get, and Joan gets on the treadmill, and you go, and everybody pants, and you exercise your legs, and you exercise your rear end, and your front end, and your top parts, and your lower parts, and this side and that side. And there's one thing that you've totally never even touched, and it is shriveled up like an old beggar. It's the pineal gland of the brain. And why didn't you exercise it? Because nobody even told you you had one. The most important, what does Rene Descartes say? The place where God meets you is the place that's neglected. The lamp has gone out. Light the lamp. Touch the stove. It's nothing to do with religion. It has to do with your brain and a gland in your brain that you're going to activate. And it's going to do things like Newsweek says melatonin is going to flow and all this kind of stuff. Okay. I don't know if it's pineal gland. Well, all I know about it, that's you. Look at that. You even got your bow tie.
Very good, Bill.
Okay. In the center of your brain, is a thing called the pineal or pineal gland, pineal, okay? It is called the sacred pine cone. The ancients knew about it. It is also called the single eye. The energy comes from the solar plexus, which is the fire energy, touches the sacred pine cone opens. It's the same way it happens in the forest. The fire comes, touches the pine cone opens and throws open the seed of life. That pineal gland is the single eye, the point where you and God come face to face, and you have totally not touched it. It's absolutely atrophied from lack of use. This is what, you know what's a good part of this? It doesn't cost you any money to touch the pineal gland. You don't have to join any church to touch the pineal. You don't have to go anywhere. It's a total personal thing between you and yourself. You want to do it, you do it. You don't, you don't. You want to stay on the left side, you stay on the left side. You want to go to the Garden of Eden and learn what life is about and become one with nature, you can do it. But you got to touch that stone. Let's get to that, okay? Now, we got to the point where you know you're thirsty. We've kind of analyzed what this is. You're in a desert of confusion and you're thirsty. Now come the instructions as to what to do. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to do this? Here are the instructions, okay? I want you to turn to page 62, where you are, Exodus chapter 17, so that we can see the instructions and we can understand them as given through this myth, okay? In Exodus chapter 17, verse 5, God says to Moses, and Moses is not a person who ever lived. Moses is a part of your mentality that leads you into the promised land. Moses is another code word for another aspect of your ego, your desire, your discipline that will lead you to the right hemisphere of the brain. Okay, Exodus chapter 17, verse 5. Go on before the people. It's your thoughts. Your thoughts are the people. Go before your thoughts. Go before your mind. Go before that which is within you and speaking to you. And if you don't think that the people is your mind, sit and listen to yourself. If you don't think that the people is your mind, think of the dream you had last night. Who are these people that you're talking to? Okay. Take, in verse 5, take the elders of Israel. The elders are exactly what you're listening to right now. The truth that's coming out of ancient scripture is revealed to you through the translation of metaphysics and symbols are the elders. The dark sayings the existence of this. You believe that Jesus was born on December the 25th. The elders say that the sun is born out of the winter solstice on December the 25th. Since when? Since the beginning of time, out of the dark age. It's always been that way. So the elders is what you're hearing right now. Not some guy that's made a duchess or a duchess or a deacon or whatever they are. We're talking about an elder who is the Ancient of Days, the truth that comes from the beginning of time that says, if the energy rises from your lower and moves highward up the spine, it will touch the pineal and it will open the right hemisphere of the brain. That is a mystical statement out of the ancient scriptures as an elder. Go before yourself. Take the elders. Take this truth, okay? And what is an elder? Let me just show you real quick. Leave your finger where you are. Go to page 781 and I'll show you an elder. This is an ancient statement of truth about the pineal gland of your brain and the secretion of melatonin into your body. Matthew chapter 6. Remember, melatonin is a skin lightener. Lightener, okay? Matthew chapter 6. Look at verse 22. If the light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye be single, pineal, 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 single eye, single eye, single eye, pineal, pineal, single eye. If your eye be single, pineal, your whole body shall be filled with light melatonin, light melatonin, light melatonin, light melatonin. If you stimulate the pineal gland, your body will fill with melatonin. And if you don't believe Jesus, certainly you'll believe Newsweek. Because Newsweek says the same thing. And Newsweek wouldn't lie. I don't believe Newsweek. I believe Newsweek. Okay. Now, Exodus 17:5, back where you are. You enter within the people. The elders are your understanding. Now this is the point. Take the rod. Okay? Now, what I want to do, would you, and please, I want you to take, don't even think about reading all this stuff here because you're going to screw me all up and you're not going to pay any attention. Just hold on to this. I want to show you something, okay? Just take that. This is the introduction. Now, do you see, are you there at Exodus chapter 17, verse 5? It says, take the rod. Do you see that? Okay. The rod is very important. It is a symbol of divine power. The rod, okay, let me tell you also what the rod is. The rod is your spine. Okay? The rod is the spine, and the ancients of India in the Kundalini knew it as the spine that is sealed with 7 seals or 7 chakras, and that the energy would rise up through those 7 chakras or 7 points of resistance. What do you have in your body? You don't have serpents. You don't have spirits. You've got electricity. The electricity would move up through those 7 chakras or 7 resistance points, okay? As the electricity would move up through the 7 resistance points in your spine, the ancient people would chant a word. They would say, Om, okay? And you say, oh, that is very occult. But what is the international word that designates electrical resistance? Oh, how did they know? Did anybody know that they're sitting in Nepal at the top of a mountain somewhere chanting the international name of electrical resistance 15,000 years ago? Om. Who told them Om was the number of resistance? Do you understand what I'm telling you? Okay. Now, why is it important to you? It rises up, impacts the pineal gland that we talked about, opens the right hemisphere of the brain. Real quick, go to page 1005. We're going to kind of have to move it because there's just a few things, but I wanted to get to you, okay? 1005. Here's the description of this very same in your Bible. So you can show people and they say, how do I know The Bible told me so. How do you know? Shall we read about this same thing in the Bible? Let's all read it together, he said. Revelation chapter 5, verse 1. And I saw in the right hand, that's the right hemisphere of the brain, of him who sat on the throne, which is your highest consciousness, a book. That's the book of life. Didn't I ever tell you in school? Make sure your name is written in the book of life. Now you're understanding how it's going to get there. A book. Where's the book written? Written within. Within what? Within you. And where? On the back side, the spine, sealed with 7 seals. It's in the Bible. You see, I mean, I'm not talking about something that's in a New Age bookstore with rocks and smoke. I'm talking about something that's in the Bible. Okay? Now, look at this thing that I gave you. It's written by Dr. Alfred Louis. I just want you to look at the picture. Dr. Alfred Louis in the book Hormones, published by Chapman and Hall. Over to the right. After traveling through nerves in the spinal cord, the signal reaches the pineal gland. In the absence of light signals, the gland begins production of melatonin. But how does it get there? It travels through nerves in the spinal cord. The Bible, Kundalini, there it is. And now here, what has happened here in Exodus 17:5. I want you to see and go with me so we learn about this understanding of this rod business. Go with me to page 49 in Exodus chapter 4. This is the key part of what we're doing here today, so just try to hold out for a few more minutes because this is critical and this is what you came here, and this is why I came here today to share with you. Exodus chapter 4, verse 2, Moses is talking to God, and Moses says to God, look, I can't talk to no Pharaoh. I don't know what the heck to say to Pharaoh. I don't even know. I can't speak. Look, I stutter. I don't know what to say. What am I going to say? How am I going to do this? And what do you say? You don't know how to talk to your boss. You don't know how to talk to your wife. She doesn't know how to talk to you. You don't know how to talk to your mother-in-law. You don't know how to talk to the cop that's going to give you the ticket. You don't know how to talk to the guy that's coming to repossess. You don't have to talk to him. What am I going to say? I got to go to court Thursday. I don't know what am I going to say. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? I don't know. So we scream, we go in and we sulk and we stay there. And we just sit by ourselves and just smote inside of ourselves. When are you going to come out? Never. Never going to come out. Because I'm in a mood. Because I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do anymore. It's like the kids say, Mom, I can't get this math. Did you ever see this pathetic kid on television? What's wrong, Billy? I can't get this math. Get a job. Get him out of the house. Get a job. Okay. Exodus chapter 4, verse 2. And Moses says, look, they're not going to listen to me. And the Lord says in verse 2, what is it in your hand? And he says, a rod. And God says, cast it on the ground. And when he threw it on the ground, it became a serpent. The rod is your spine. You stand on it. It supports you. It is your life. It is your physical life. It is your seat of dependence. You're depending on your physical nature. You're depending on everything physical. And what the admonition is, take that and throw it on the ground. Don't depend on that anymore. Don't depend on what you think. Don't depend on what you understand. Don't depend on your life or your traditions or your physical experience. And when you will no longer depend on yourself, rod, instead throw it on the ground, it'll become the serpent. It'll become the Kundalini. It'll become the winged, trying serpent. And it will rise upward and impact the pineal. And it will devour the hurts, and it will devour the fears, and it will devour the guilt, and it will devour the oppression that people have put on you, and it will set you free. Throw it down, and it'll become the serpent Kundalini. It'll become the book of life. Separate from thought. Separate from yourself, and she will come to life. Right? So, now, go to Exodus 17, where we were on page 62, and we'll get to the crux of this story. They're thirsty. They're out in the water. They're out in the wilderness looking for water, thirsty. You and I are out in the wilderness. Now, here's the idea. This is what you got to do. Exodus 17, look at verse 6. And God says, I will stand before you upon the rock in Horeb. The word Horeb means the mountain of the dried up ground. Right here, right between your ears, the mountain of the dried up ground. And God's saying, I'll stand there. I'll wait for you. I'll stand right smack there. I'll stand right on that rock. I'll stand right on that pineal gland. Do you know the pineal gland is a sandy consistency? But when you regenerate it through meditation, it becomes like a stone, like a rock. And he says, I'll stand there a mountain place, a dry place. Exodus 17:6. Moses, this is what you do. You shall smite. In other words, you shall hit that rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. The rock is the stone. The rock is the stone. The rock is the pineal gland of the brain. The rod is the spine. When the energy rises up the spine, it's coming up the rod, and it touches the stone, and the stone opens, and you become one with God. What an instruction. Let the rod touch the stone. Let the energy that rises up your spine through meditation touch the pineal gland, and the water will flow. The melatonin will flow. Every part of your body. Wow. Now, watch this one. Keep your finger there. Go to page 475 in Psalm 27. Page 400 and, what did I say, 75 in Psalm 27. And in Psalm 27, look what it says. Phew. In verse 5. In the time of trouble, he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me up upon a rock. The stone. The stone that Jesus said the builders' religion have rejected has turned out to be the most important one of all. And that's what's being shown in all of your television programs. That's what's being shown in all of your magazines. This pineal stone. So the rod touching the rock is that energy of the spine touching the pineal. And when this occurs, the water flows, the truth, to bring forth healing, to bring forth understanding, to bring forth direction. You've got to go up and touch that stone. You say, well, how do I don't know how to do it. You don't have to, that's the good, you don't have to do anything. You've got to sacrifice one thing, the ego and the tradition. You've got to sit on the floor. You've got to sit still for a half hour and sacrifice yourself to this energy of love so that that serpent can rise upward and touch that pineal gland, and then the energy will explode that sacred pine cone, and the seeds of new life will flow throughout your entire body. And where this happens, if you look in Exodus 17:7, where they call the name of the place Massa and Meribah. You know what Massa means? Trial. And you know what Meribah means? Quarrel. Right in the middle of all the trials and all the quarrels that flood through your mind and a torment is this bitterness. Right smack in the middle of this is where that stone is. And right smack in the middle of this is where God says he's waiting for you to touch it. And listening to me doesn't touch it. And reading the Bible doesn't touch it. But sitting in the dark by yourself and causing your energy to flow upward in meditation touches it. And I want to show you one last thing that's very important. The admonition was take that rod, let the energy that flies up, comes up your spine, hit the pineal gland of the brain, and everything will flow. And Moses got in trouble. There was no Moses. But here's how you get in trouble. Here's how you don't accomplish what you set out to accomplish. I want you to look at page 136. And this is the last scripture that we look at. Page 136, Deuteronomy chapter 20. Okay? Deuteronomy chapter 20. On page, is that 136? Oh, all right. You know, that's what I said. I wanted to see if you're paying attention, and you know, and that's what I wanted you to do. Okay. Now look at look at verse 8. Take the rod, gather the assembly together, speak unto the rod, it'll give forth the water that we've gone through. And Moses took the rod as God commanded him. And Moses and everybody got together, verse 10, by the rock. And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote or hit the rock twice. And he never was able to see the promised land. dwell in cosmology. This stuff is written by people who dwelled in the desert and were deep mystical people. People of the, and so when you look at this, you talk about an ox. What is it, how many of you that are watching this, how many of you sitting here own an ox? Nobody owns an ox. So, I mean, it's irrelevant. Why is it